Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origin of Mint Condition, a Joe's Comic Corner episode. I am your guest host, Keith Tarnowski, and joining me is our guest and regular recurring host, Joe.
Hey, Keith, how
I'm
you
good.
doing?
How are you?
Pretty good. Reading a lot of comic books.
Oh, yeah. Me too. Me too. Comic books, articles, a lot of deep research.
Yes.
So today we'll be reviewing what is my favorite comic book story, and I would say the best Flash story, in my opinion. The story by Mark Waid and Greg LeGrook, The Return of Barry Allen, which took place in issues 74 to 79 of Flash Volume 2. The story, give you a brief synopsis of what it's about. When he was young, when he was Kid Flash, Wally West looked upon Barry Allen, the Flash, as just about perfect. Hero, mentor, icon. The Flash even sacrificed himself to save the universe. Now, years later, Wally's the Flash, trying to live up to Barry's example. And then Barry Allen returns from the dead. So we're going to cover this story in sort of chapters or issues, so to speak. I thought I'd kind of, for the fun of it and switch it up a little bit, is pull one of my favorite quotes from each issue before Joe and I dig into it. So my first quote is from the first issue 74, and it starts on a very optimistic note. This is Wally narrating. Once upon a time, Barry Allen sacrificed himself to save the universe. In tribute, I took his name and identity, but not his courage. That was his alone. Now he's back, and whatever tomorrow may bring, one thing is certain. He's the greatest hero I've ever known, and I'm proud to follow in his footsteps. So, first issue, number 74 of this, Joe. Thoughts? What do you think, looking back on this?
You just threw a brand new thought into my head. Courage, right? As this story progresses, we're going to find that Wally has to find courage to do something to defeat. I don't want to give it. Are we going to? We should mention we got spoilers coming.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's a 30-year-old story. Yeah, so
yeah, absolutely. I personally feel like, as you know, when you are reading it, especially back in the day, as the revelation is definitely a gut punch. I don't think it takes anything away from the story. I think if anything, hopefully this episode will make people who didn't read it want to read it, and people who did read it want to reread it.
Yeah. So, I mean, right off the bat, that's a great quote, because what happens, throughout as the story unfolds, is Wally has to dig deep, not only physically, but, internally, emotionally, to overcome. And it takes courage. It takes courage to face foes on the open battlefield, but it takes courage to admit your limitations. And Wally has serious limitations.
Absolutely.
That he has to overcome. So, yeah, that's a great opening quote.
And what's great about, this story, I believe, stands alone as a great story. You can give it to anyone because it explains just enough backstory. But, if you were reading The Flash throughout Wally's run, or even especially Barry's before that, this really hits you even more. There's so much history between Wally and Barry and other characters that pop up throughout it, that it really it delivers on a different level. For people who don't know, the title is called The Return of Barry Allen, but this is 1,000% a Wally West story, and coming into himself, not coming of age, but coming into being the hero that everyone knew he could be. Story.
Very much so, and I love that cover. I'm looking at the cover of issue 74 with, all the too many speedsters, and there's Barry in the middle, a few other Barrys, and there's a lot of Wallys around.
Yep. And it's great because Barry one day, Wally and Linda, before they're married, obviously, are spending Christmas Eve with Jay Garrick and his wife Joan. Something they hadn't done for a while because Jay was missing for a while until right before this. And a knock comes on the door, and on Christmas Eve, a man in a red suit, well, not really wearing the red suit, but Barry Allen is there knocking on Jay Garrick's door, and everyone's shocked. And, in the beginning, Wally's a little hesitant to believe that that this is indeed Barry, but Hal Jordan uses his power ring on Barry as a lie detector of sorts to make sure that he's telling the truth. Jay believes it, everyone believes it, and it takes that first issue for Wally to really wrap his head around it and accept it, and that's because he finds Barry going to Iris's grave and has that moment where he's talking to Iris about how they got engaged and all this stuff, and it was just really heartwarming. And that's when Wally believes him and just embraces him, and that's basically where that quote that I just started the chapter with comes from.
Yeah, when you think about this is what cover date March 1993, right? So it may have come out January, it might even come out in December of that year, depending on how the books are released. But this is it's at the inception of the internet. So really, unless you're at a comic convention that summer and pick up something there, or reading the trade fanzines at the time, this is a shock. And this is all before the return of a lot of other characters, where it's like now it's what's said last year, DC killed off Wonder Woman twice, and 2 times. So, I mean, you see this story, and especially when you see them embrace at the end, when Barry is at, as you said, at Iris's grave, I believed that this was Barry. So, okay, I guess they're going to prove this is Barry.
1,000%. Yeah, and it was shocking because it was a time, like you said, where death in comics seemed more permanent. If someone died in the issue and then came back, that doesn't count. That was more, that just happens in a lot of different, fantasy stories. But when a character was dead, and for years especially, you just really, and especially in a case where there were instances where that you see the character in heaven, for God's sakes, like Barry was actually in heaven in Kevin Smith's Green Arrow. They. You believed it more back then. Now there's a revolving door on heaven, so it's really kind of not a thing. But this is great, and the artist. I mean, listen, Mark Waid is to me the best Flash writer, especially the best Wally Flash writer, and he nails his voice like no one else. But Greg LeGros, he was on the books since issue 15, and I always liked him, but he dialed it up in this arc.
Yeah, and I didn't realize before I went back to read these, I thought that Jose Marzón was the inker, but it was Roy Richardson, and he's damn good too, man. Beautiful. Wow, gorgeous inks,
beautiful work, inks. And also shows you because now in modern time we all know Barry has been back for a while in reality, and this shows a difference how you can have these very similar costumes if they're incorrectly, and people remember the coloring differences. It really is. It's not an issue, really. Making kind of separating the two.
No, not at all. I mean, we look at the Green Lantern Corps, right? There's variations between Hal and John and Guy and Kyle. But when I was a boy reading Green Lantern back in the olden days in the '60s, and the only difference between Hal and the other alien Green Lanterns was maybe a pair of antennas or 4 legs, but the costume was the same. So it comes off. They pulled it off. They can prove you can have 2 characters named the Flash and similar suits, but there's no trouble telling them apart, none whatsoever. Yeah. So and we know we can tell them apart because not only because of the way they look, but
absolutely. I mean, you understand why DC doesn't have 2 Flash books because in a sense they look very similar, but their personalities, they're very different. They're both courageous heroes and always do the right thing, but then they're night and day. Barry's more of like an introvert and very science minded, and kind of always been like a one woman man, and Wally had growing pains and is more of a goofball, more self-deprecating, it took him a while. And listen, some of that could be because of the time. The heroes were more fully realized in the 50s, and when Wally took over the mantle, it was that whole deconstruction of the hero. So they kind of, give him more layers to him. But thank God they never fell into it too much where they made Wally all dark, except for that terrible Tom King story.
We didn't mention that.
Don't give it. I wouldn't give it any oxygen.
Yeah, don't go out and buy that, folks. Go out and buy the Return of Barry Allen.
Great great opening. The optimistic feel at the end is great. It doesn't take too long though, in the second chapter, for things to
Mhm.
start, raising some eyebrows and having some worry. So, yeah, I'd like to move on to issue 75, where things really get cooking. And my
Yes.
quote for this issue is not nearly as optimistic as the first one. And this quote is Barry Allen yelling at a criminal punk who thought he killed Wally and made a
Right.
grand claim that he killed the Flash. And what Wally overhears Barry yell at the criminal isn't anything about missing Wally or avenging Wally. He yells out, "I'm the Flash. Do you understand me, punk? I'm the Flash."
Yeah.
And
I'm the
Wally hears
Flash.
this, and so we'll jump into that issue number 75. Wally, um, that's the first crack in the armor of what everyone would used to refer to Barry as the patron saint of the DC universe. What did you I know it's an old story, Joe, but like you can remember what you were thinking when you first read that. Were you still thinking it was Barry, or maybe Barry was somehow corrupted, or what? Did you remember what your initial thoughts were?
I thought that Barry was either somehow corrupted or the fact, because he couldn't explain how he came back to when he materialized in an
Mhm.
alleyway. I thought maybe Barry's return had affected his mind somehow, and because that's a trope we've seen in comics for
Yeah,
ages, right? Where, Superman being exposed to red kryptonite. They even did it on Lois and Clark where he becomes apathetic.
right.
That was a hysterical episode, but he goes to a shrink. But yeah, so I thought that, yeah, okay, I still think this is Barry, but maybe Barry's got some of his nuts scrambled, so to speak, in his head. So
Yeah,
okay,
and listen,
so I'm along for the
and
ride
listen,
still.
it wouldn't be out of the question, given the time with you know I know what happened after this, but the time of like the Emerald Twilights and making
Hmm.
giving heroes guns and making them grim. It wouldn't be out even now with what we talked about with Wally West. It wouldn't be out of the question for a publisher to do something crazy just to sell comics. Break the bat, kill Superman. Although killing Superman was a really good story, ultimately the whole
Hmm.
thing. But so yeah, in my head, Hal vouching for him, and the things he knew and was saying. I'm with you. I was you know thought it was him, but was also kind of hoping it wasn't. No,
Yeah, I didn't want Barry to be bad guy. I
I
didn't
mean
want him to
Barry.
be a total
Yeah,
jerk.
right. Like Wally, we all love Barry. He was
Yeah.
God. I mean, I love Barry's first run of comics. Like we talked before, Carrie Bates, and
Uh-huh.
it's an amazing run and groundbreaking. The criminals that were created, the rogues,
The Rogues
yeah,
Gallery.
the
Yeah,
stories, the
exactly.
art. I mean, the
Oh,
mythology.
gorgeous stuff. Oh, very much so, and very much a mythology that was tied into the DC universe proper, tied into the Green Lantern mythology because there was, Barry and Hal were such great friends. I grew up with Barry in the '60s. He was my
Yeah.
Flash, but you know, when he disappeared, and I was, ready to let him go. Here is what they see. He died in '85 or '86.
86 technically, yeah.
Okay, so here we are. What, 7 years later? It's '93, and Barry's back, or is he? Yeah. So okay, like I said, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I feel the same way. It was just uh, so well done because you're kind of rooting for both of them. For Barry to kind of snap out of whatever it is, and kind of
Mm.
even though things didn't get that bad yet, but your heart's breaking a little bit for Wally as well.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, Wally, as you know, when we've discussed this ad infinitum, Wally to us, Wally is the Flash, and I think anybody who's read DC comics for an extended period of time would admit that too. That Wally is the Flash. And I hope that in this coming DC universe at some point, you know, Wally is the Flash on this big screen. That's what I'm hoping for. But we'll see
yeah,
what happens.
no,
In the
I
meantime, we'll get back to the
I would love
story.
it, but I also get a little worried that they would mess it up somehow and make Wally all dark and
Yes.
or something like that. So like I would be cautiously optimistic about it. To
Yes.
get a little more on, because Wally West, no matter what, is always a optimistic and fun hero. Even when he has his moments that are dark, which he has in this story, they don't last long.
Mm-hmm.
Wally doesn't dwell in it. You know what I mean? So
No, it's
bring
not
some
his
humor to it.
personality.
One of my favorite parts of this issue is when Linda is talking to Wally about Barry being back and all that. They're Linda's cooking tacos and they're talking about it, and Linda asks Wally like what he's feeling, because it seems like he's acting a little odd. He's like, oh, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like maybe I might be a little redundant, being the
Yeah.
third Flash in Keystone Central City. And Linda and him kind of joke, where Linda jokes around about him maybe taking a new code name, and she starts throwing out all these names. And some of them are funny because he picks Quicksilver. He's like, well, that's very taken. And there's other ones like that are taken, like or lame. He thinks like lightning, and then Linda comes up with, this stuck with me forever, like 30 years. She's like, how about Mr. Zip? And Wally like laughs about it, and kind of tickles her and makes jokes about it for a while, and then one thing I love, he's like, he ends the conversation with like, I'm the Flash, stay used to it. But there's that humor, it's always there with Wally in there. It's like, it's a different kind of humor. It's not Peter Parker, you know what I mean? It's more, I always kind of think of him, Wally isn't as smart as Barry. He's smart, but he's a little dopey. He's a little cocky and insecure at the same time. He's more complex,
He's a very nuanced character,
Right.
very much.
He can be a jerk, as we all know.
Yeah, and it's self-deprecating humor, but not to the point of a Peter Parker.
No.
Wally doesn't take himself seriously, but he's not a woe is me character. Not
at all. Not at all. And he, which is why that one of the many reasons why that other story didn't work with him, because this doesn't even the writer Tom King said he wish he never used that character. It doesn't fit. But he's not self-deprecating to that point. He's almost got like a cockiness to him, but not an obnoxious one.
Yeah.
He's unique.
Yeah, he's one of the very unique, characters in the DC universe. He is I think he's the greatest legacy character. I would even put him in front of Dick Grayson. I guess that might be heresy.
I absolutely agree. I mean, he's accomplished more.
Yeah, yes, he has.
I mean, he's the sidekick, the only sidekick in history that ever fulfilled the promise, quote unquote, permanently. I mean, 20-something years alone in the spotlight, and he's still a Flash now. So 30-something, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dick might have been Batman for like a year or two in Morrison's run. And then, Bucky was Cap for a couple of years at Brubaker, but everyone knew those things were temporary. Wally was the only Flash, not only Flash, but he was the lead Flash from 1987 to 2008, and then 6, and then back in 8, but for like 20-something years. People, a lot of people might find this hard to believe because of the show being on for so long and Barry being in the comics and not getting a movie. It was 20-something years where most people didn't really talk about Barry coming back. The Flash was Wally for most people, even people that grew up with Barry like yourself.
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, the saying was that 3 characters will always stay dead: Uncle Ben, Gwen Stacy, and Barry Allen. And Uncle Ben is still dead, and Gwen came back a couple of times. And Barry's back now. But, I'm not going to begrudge Barry being back, but hopefully not at the detriment of Wally in the near future.
I'm with you. I love Barry, but I feel like the DC universe lost something special when he came back, because at Wally's sacrifice, he was so unique in so many ways. And even different, like seeing him in the Justice League it added like a layer to the Justice League, having like the original characters with some younger ones like him and Kyle and Connor. Like not everyone were exactly peers. They were, but it added a different dynamic than people that came up exactly together. You know what I mean? It's how they looked at each other. Like Wally was as competent as the originals, but he still looked at them a certain way. But they still respected him. But then someone like Kyle was the newbie and was kind of like, it added something that now when it's just like the big seven originals, it feels a little more generic to me.
Yeah,
But again,
sure. Yeah,
I think that's like a metaphor for DC Comics. When they did the New 52 and they took away the legacy, it didn't feel like DC Comics.
Not at all. No. I was, and people on this podcast know what I think of the New 52. There are a couple of good books. Most of the Batman run was good in the JLA, but nah.
Yeah, I mean, they're bound to be something good, right? But
yeah. But what they did to Superman, I'll never forgive them for that.
Hey, and listen, I mean, it's the proof's in the pudding. I mean, when it took them a long time to, I wouldn't even say they reversed Crisis because they didn't. They just added upon it. They kept basically that continuity. They just added the stuff we liked from before, but they flipped on the New 52 pretty quick.
No, they had to because the sales was just about a year into the New 52. The sales were going in the crap.
Yeah. But I agree. But so anyway, why don't we jump to the next issue, 76. 76. This one is this is where things really kind of turn and hit the fan. But before they do, I'll start with another one of my quotes. This one again, more optimistic, is I don't want to, I got to give some levity because this next issue is pretty heavy. Life begins at 10. At least that's my story. Most kids my age have no idea what tomorrow brings. I know I didn't. Not until Barry Allen took me under his wing. He gave me purpose, a direction, an identity that would totally define my life. It was the greatest gift I ever received. And then, then things kind of go south. So anyway, in this issue, there's a new criminal empire that's been taking over in the Twin Cities of Keystone and Central. And there's a mysterious head of this organization that we don't know about yet. And they're called the Combine. And they're on the attack. So the J calls and the Flashes go to save the day. And while they're there, Barry and Wally get caught in this force field that is like shrinking at a rapid rate, and they can't vibrate out of it because it matches. It'll amend its vibrations if they do. So Wally has the idea if they both vibrate at the same time, that it'll kind of mess it up and they can sneak out. So Barry gets out. And Wally can't get out on his own, and he needs Barry to kind of grab his hand and pull him out. And that's when it takes a turn, and Barry Allen leaves him there to die. So at that point, Joe, you had to wonder who that was, huh?
Serious doubts at that point. Yes, I'm trying to think back again 30 years ago, but very, very, very doubtful that this was Barry at this point. I had no inclination that it was going to be who it turned out to be. But shapeshifters and imposters are rampant in comic book universes. So I'm saying, okay, this can't be Barry, because even if he had his head messed up coming back, he would never do this to Wally. So and obviously, that last page of 70. There's two things I want to say about 76 that are homages. We've talked about this offline, but. The cover to issue 76, volume 2 is an homage to the cover of Flash, volume 1, number 184. And, I encourage our listeners to go to Google the cover of Flash 184, and they'll know what we're talking about. It's almost word for word in big lettering, a copy. And both Flashes, Barry on 184 and Wally on 76, look totally and completely defeated. So, and then that last page, Keith, where he's sitting with his head in his hand, and where Barry announces to the Twin Cities that Wally is dead. The last page, the Flash is dead, and there's Wally's uniform, suit, whatever, sitting in what looks like a trash can. I'm going to ask you, Keith, do you know what that's about?
You know what's really funny is I've read this story about like 20-something times, and I never picked up on it. But now that you say it, yes, I know. I know it.
You know exactly, right? Amazing Spider-Man 50,
no more.
Right? Yeah, Spider-Man no more. So you know what? I read it many times and I didn't realize it until tonight. When I'm looking at it, he goes, holy crap. The cover is an homage to a Silver Age Flash comic, and the last page is a cover to a Silver Age Spider-Man comic. And it's like this is so freaking cool. So
you're right. It's amazing.
And it's the author Mark Waid, who was just one of the consummate comic book authors of the entire medium at any time, at any period.
1,000%. The guy, I've read, a couple stories I didn't really love by him, but overall he puts out some great quality and just knows the characters. And to be honest with you, I think sometimes the stories he has that are bad, I think are probably an editorial reason, like his Avengers,
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, we've discussed that before. How sometimes a bad story may not be the author's fault. It's the same thing with a bad movie. I mean, the director, goes off kilter with the script and wants to do things his or her way, and all of a sudden the movie falls apart. Absolutely. Even the actors can't.
Absolutely. I mean, and I hear that. You hear that when you listen to like podcasts about movies or even comics from some of the writers. Sometimes they think they nailed something, and then when it gets released, they're like, "Oh my god, what a piece of garbage!" And sometimes things come together, and they're like, "Oh, how'd this even happen? How'd this come out so good?"
Yeah, well, there's hits and misses that sometimes just happen organically,
right?
And it's like what do they call it, the perfect storm.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it happens all the time in popular culture. Yeah. So this issue was really, I mean, at the end of this issue, like you're drained too. I mean, you see how Wally is drained, and he's like, this is a low point. Now you had said in one of our text threads that this story you thought was kind of akin to Matt Murdock's Born Again,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we've been talking about that recently. That it kind of like mirrored it. It also doesn't hurt that the two redheads.
Holy crap! I didn't realize that. You're right. Oh, I'm missing the obvious. That's right. The two redheads. For our listeners, we do have an episode coming up that does deal. It's James's book club first edition, first episode, and then the first book we read was Daredevil Born Again. So, but yeah, the two redheads, two guys that are well, they're both heroic in their own way. Obviously, Daredevil's Matt's a much more troubled individual than Wally ever was or ever will be. But yeah, I mean, it's Wally has to sink down to the lowest depths before he can recapture his himself and his heroism.
Yeah, and very good point. It's funny, a little funny thing. I remember that I was listening to a podcast years ago with Matt Murdock on, I think, the Word Balloon podcast, and he was at the time he was writing Daredevil. I'm sorry, with Mark Waid was writing the Daredevil comic at the time. And at the time was right around the time where Flash Rebirth happened, and actually, I think even after, and while he was just gone, it wasn't being published. I think he didn't even exist in the comics at that point because it was New 52. And they were asking, what Waid thought about what was going on in DC and all that, and he was kind, but he made a comment like because he was writing Daredevil. He's like, don't worry, I'm taking care of Wally. I'm hiding him in the Daredevil book. He's got red hair too. I'm taking care of him.
That's funny.
One thing I'd like to point out about this issue too is not only this a great, my favorite story. Like I love this book. I must have bought this trade paperback for so many people just to get them to read it over the years. I probably bought like 6 or 7 copies because I want you to read it, and maybe someone. I used to buy one for a buddy of mine. Who used to smoke in his apartment, so I didn't want to give him my copy. And various reasons like that. But it's not only a great story, but also it plants the seeds for other stuff that is going to come. That's going to affect not only the rest of Wade's run in an amazing way, but for 30 years in the future. So, and I mean publishing, not even in the story. I mean, so basically, after the last issue, even before Wally was keen on it, Jay Garrick had some suspicions about Barry's return. Mm-hmm. He started to kind of see things, I guess, off panel that we hadn't seen or Wally hadn't seen yet. And to kind of be prepared for it, he went to some of his old friends to get some help. And one of them was Johnny Quick, who was another speedster. Which, Joe, he was originally he was an Earth 2 character, correct? Before the Crisis?
Oh, yeah. I got little stuff about him.
Oh, good. Cool.
Yeah.
Another character that they pulled out of mothballs, so to speak, was a character that was really only in one comic, I believe, before, and then he was called Quicksilver, which is another wink,
Hmm.
wink to what Linda's comment was. Um,
Right.
but he really wasn't fleshed out. He didn't have a real identity. There wasn't much to him at all. Mark Waid said he had just something about that costume. Mark said he loved that costume, and he liked the idea that he was an acrobat. So Mark gave him a whole backstory and was going to use him in the future. Max Mercury dubbed him the Zen Master of Speed. Not only does Jay get Johnny and Max for assistance, but later on in the story, Max will be integral to helping Wally overcome Barry Allen and some other things.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
So yeah, so you want to share that flashback, Joe?
Yeah, I got some flashbacks. Well, about the three older speedsters. Obviously, Jay Garrick's first appearance was Flash Comics, cover date number one, January 1940. But I think it went on sale. No, it did go on sale November 10th, 1939, the same year as Batman, the Human Torch, the Submariner, and the original Captain Marvel. So I mean, the Flash he's there at the very beginning of the Golden Age. The only ones who were there before him was Superman. So basically, when you think of this great characters of the Golden Age, Jay Garrick is there from the beginning, and then we have, as you mentioned, we have. Let me see now. We have Johnny Quick's first appearance, More Fun Comics number 71, which predates Green Arrow and Aquaman, who appeared two issues
Wow.
later in number 73, and he was created by Mort Weisinger, who went on to co-create Aquaman with, I want to say, I can't think of the guy's first name, but Norris is his last name. And of course, Weisinger took over the Superman books in the mid 50s and built that entire Superman mythos with Legion, Supergirl, and super pets and multiple forms of kryptonite, the whole schmear. And then you've got Max Mercury, gifted his powers by a Native American shaman in the period of the Old West. Max protected both Native Americans and settlers from injustice, and was known throughout time by various names. And you mentioned Lightning, Blue Streak, and Quicksilver. No, he's not. He's not a mutant. So those are three intriguing characters that Wade brings in. It just just adds to the tapestry, and something special is happening in this story when you see all these speedsters. And there's are we getting to that? Is that the next issue? Is it 77 or is it 76 with the old? There's that double
77.
spread. Okay, I won't go. I okay, because you know how I feel about that double page spread. But yeah, so these characters are they're not there, as decorations. They're there for a reason.
And you're right. You felt like something special was happening, like something was building here, and something was building that would be paying off in many other Flash stories, not only in Wade's long run, but in John's and even today.
Yep, very much.
I gotta say, the dork in me, I love the name Blue Streak.
Oh, it's great.
And I love little things that Wade does that imply like a history and got me so excited. It was Jay makes a comment to Max when he's trying to recruit him to come help out, because Max is a little hesitant at first. He's even hiding who he is. And Jay makes a comment about how Max was his hero, and he taught him so much. And I'm like, oh, there's a story there. There's a bunch of stories there somewhere that implied history of the characters you never saw together before. That's just the way it is now. Max was a teacher, an inspiration to both Jay and Johnny Quick, even though Johnny got teased a lot by Max.
Yeah, Max. I just said this. Max is kind of like the Zen Master of Speed, but he's to speedsters what Wildcat was to Black Canary, Batman, anybody that had to use martial arts, right? So that's again, this is Mr. Wade putting all the pieces together.
Building, world building, like beyond,
Yeah, very much so.
Because then not yet, but like with Johnny Quick later comes Jesse Quick, and it's just so much, and then
Hmm.
seeds are planted here for impulse and other
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And impulse is a great character, and he tortured Max Mercury for 70 something issues.
Poor
Poor
guy.
Max was just
I love those that Impulse comic book, because it uses that old Warner Brothers cartoon where the thought bubbles are not words but pictures,
yep.
like the world stuff like that.
That's how Bart thinks. That's
That's a
Wade says it. That's how Bart. That's how Bart thinks.
that's how Bart thinks. Yeah.
It's always the impulse is the perfect name. It's Wade always says, like, he goes from just thought to reaction. He doesn't think more about it. There's that. He even said the first arc in the impulse book was called the single synapse theory. Like, he just
Yep.
go right to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much built here. It's not just an amazing story, but it plants the seeds for so many other great Flash stories: Terminal Velocity, Dead Heat, Chain Lightning, and the little ones in
Mm.
between, and stuff Johns did later. And like you said, the whole
Yep.
Impulse run.
Yeah. Great run.
And
Yeah,
no
I'm
one
gonna
gets
pull those out
Impulse
and start reading those.
like Wade. Like, no one gets it. Impulse. Even though in the beginning, even Wade wrote him a little serious because he had to in the Flash story, but that was a comedy book.
Oh yeah, yeah. Something we need again. We could use some of those
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
you're not
Definitely
kidding.
so.
It's
Yeah.
few and far between. So
Yeah.
so
Very
the
much so.
this issue is great. It basically has the betrayal of Barry, leaving Wally to die. You have Jay Garrick in the background putting together a team because he's already suspicious of what's going on with Barry. Planting the seeds for more
Hmm.
stuff. And like you said, that last page is it's heartbreaking seeing Wally betrayed by the one person he loved more than anything and looked up to.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
but
Very much
then the
so.
next issue is where things really heat up. The next issue is probably one of my single favorite issues. It's just so much happens. You got Joe's favorite splash page. You got like
Yep.
you got a big revelation, and there's so many good things. And Greg LaRoque's art is just on fire in this issue. Um,
Yeah, I'm looking
oh,
at it right now. It's just
gorgeous.
gorgeous, and that double page spread, pages 6 and 7, is just
And I'll
amazing.
tell you,
Yeah.
in this particular issue, I'm going to have two quotes
Oh, great.
in
Cool.
literally the first and the last page because they're
Ah.
they're literally stuck with me so long. I love it. So the my quote is in this issue. The first quote is the narration of of Wally saying, and this is how it reads: "His name is Barry Allen. He's the Flash, the deadliest, most ruthless supervillain ever to hold Central City in its thrall. And me, I'm Wally West, his biggest fan." That's that
Mm.
sarcastic. While he's a little down, he's down in the dumps. He hasn't lived there like some characters do, but that's Wally speak. That's something he would
Yep.
say. Like,
Very much.
there's talking about what Barry's doing, it's horrible stuff he's doing in the city, but he's like, and me, I'm his biggest fan. And it's just like beating himself up because somehow he feels like this is his fault.
Yeah. That's Wally. That's and it's a juxtaposition from what he the opening in issue 74.
Yes.
So it's again, it's very well laid out, beautiful. He Wade plants seeds, and he makes them pay off throughout the series, throughout the 6 issues. You don't have to wait till the end for everything to pay
No, and
off.
like you said, like
And,
the juxtaposed, like certain, he does that a lot. A lot of scenes are very much
mhm.
mirrored to
Yeah,
other ones, and
yeah.
it's great. Why don't you tell me about your splash page you love so much?
Well, I mean,
I'm with you.
take a look at it.
That's like pinnacle Greg LaRoque's art. It's
Yeah, it's the pinnacle of his art. It's beautifully rendered, and as I said at the beginning, Roy Richardson, the inker. I think you got to owe a lot to this to the inker also, pulling it all together. The coloring is vibrant and beautiful. Who's the colorist again? Let's see. Colored by inks colorist Matt
Hollingsworth. Yeah,
Hollingsworth.
yeah.
Okay, there you go. So again, let's give everybody credit here. All, the pencil, the inker, the colorist. It's just gorgeous, and I like the dust in the background because they're coming to a halt, and they're approaching Barry. We'll put that in quotes, air quotes.
Yes, at this point, that's safe to say.
And I hate. I don't want to be the guy again. I don't want to be the guy from Gran Torino. Get off my lawn. But I don't think you're going to get if you get a double page spread like this in a comic book today, and you do. It's it's not going to look like this. It's just not. And I don't know why. I don't know if the people are not up to the task, if the colorist is not up to the task, the inkers. Many comic books aren't even inked today anymore. It's penciler and colorist. And I think inking is so important to make these characters pop off the page. And this still looks like a comic book, and that's not a bad thing. I don't want realism in my comic books. It's not turn on the news or I'll watch a baseball game. But I want to be I want shock and awe. I want my jaw to drop when I see a beautifully rendered page, and this is all that and more.
Kind of go back to your point there. I'm with you. I don't want realism in my comics, but I'm going to quote something Brian Bendis says a lot, which whether people like him or not, it doesn't have to be. People can confuse things. It doesn't need to be realistic to be taken seriously. It has to be like true, honest to the story and characters. For that world they live in,
Right.
It has to feel honest and real. It doesn't matter if you explain how the Speed Force works or how Batman gets his weapons. Like, it has to feel honest. And for me, especially the emotions and the character moments have to feel honest more than anything. I could deal with a little plot hole. They all have them. Every story, if you dig deep, even the best stories have things you could pick apart. But if the stories and the characters feel honest, that's it. Like, this splash page is beautiful because of the art. It's also beautiful because a lot of splash pages now in comics, I hate to be that guy too, but a lot of them are just pretty, just for pretty's sake. This isn't just beautiful art; it's emotion because of what's happening here.
Yeah, throwdown's about to happen.
Between characters that love each other and think they there's more to that mystery, but Jay loves Barry and Johnny does too, and Max is trying to help. There's more oomph here. You pull up some, not all comics. There are some good comics being published. The current Flash, the World's Finest, other things, but so many of them, the splash pages are meaningless. It's like, oh look, this looks like a shiny toy, and that's it.
Yeah. No, this is a shiny toy, but it's here for a reason.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
And it looks more, and it's more than that. And I'm glad you mentioned what Bendis said about how it has to make sense within the story, because you quoted a great writer, a great comic book writer, and that makes me think of a great movie director who we lost last year, and that is the great Richard Donner, who said about Superman the movie, verisimilitude. It has to work within the framework. If you can believe a man can fly or can run at multiple speeds of sound and then eventually this multiple speeds of light, then it's got to make sense in that world. All the things that happen in that world have to make sense. And this is what Donner pulled off in that movie, and this is what Wade is pulling off in this series of books.
Yeah, no, I 1,000% agree. Donner was this is a gift. That's the thing. Those two Superman movies. Yeah, there are a lot of things that happen that some people might think are silly, but or unbelievable, like almost like too bombastic. But I never, even as an adult, doubt those things because that's the world I'm in, and it's honest to that world.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a story where certain stories where like the newer Batman, people think it's just more sophisticated storytelling because it's dark, and they explain little things that they think they're being like clever with. To me, actually, it makes it look sillier to me when something, it's still Batman. He's still a superhero. When you take something too seriously, to me, it stands out more being silly. And I never thought that the Donner Superman movies were silly. I took those as serious as a heart attack.
Right, and it's the same thing with this story.
Not serious, but you know what I mean. Like I took it seriously to myself, as myself. I didn't. It's not dark, but yeah.
How old were you when you read this story?
This story?
The first
time? I was actually in high school. I was 17.
Okay.
Oh, and I was, cool. I think I told you the other night. I was, I stopped reading comics for about a year or two, just because I was in high school. I had moved and met all these new friends, and I was more, my money had to go to like, alcohol or girls or something, and which is like, I know, a cliche story, but it was, nonetheless true. And a friend of mine in school was like, he liked Wolverine, and I really didn't know anything about like Marvel. I read before I stopped reading comics for that brief period. I read Spider-Man. That was the only Marvel I ever read. So Wolverine and the X-Men, when he showed me a book, this didn't look right to me. I didn't. I love him now, but I didn't like him. But he wanted to go pick up the new issue of Wolverine or something, and I went with him. We were walking home from school, and I was just digging through the back issues, and that's where I picked up these issues. And I was blown away. I was just like, it was unreal to me. I couldn't believe it. I was just sucked right back in. This brought me back in the comics.
Well, you see, it worked. Then.
Yeah, I was just like, what is going on? Then I had to go back at, like a year and half worth of what I missed. And then it was off to the races again. And all of a sudden I'm freaking buying everything again. Green Lantern.
Well, isn't it fun when you have to track down issues, right? I
used to carry a piece of paper in my wallet, my want list, and I would go to stores and check them off when I got them. And it was, you're right, it was so exciting to get, to finally track something down. Listen, I love being able to read digital comics now and not have to wait or track something down, or even with music, the same thing. But there was something special about hunting down and going to, man, it took me like forever to track down like a JSA issue. I had to go to a convention. Like it was just it was so satisfying when you got it.
No, well, when I was tracking down stuff when I was your age, it was conventions. There were bookstores, but they weren't comic book stores. There was one we used to visit all the time, my friends and I, in Flatbush in Brooklyn. We lived in East New York, Brooklyn, the complete other side of the borough. And we'd take two subways to get there. And it was called My Friend's Bookstore. That's right, yeah. And I remember buying back issues of Justice League of America, issues, say, from between 10 and 30, right? Volume 1 for like 50 cents a piece in like 1970. I would go with a fistful of quarters. And it was so cool to track this stuff down. It was part of the fun of reading comics. And I just hope people are doing that today. I really do. I want the young kids especially to have the same experiences we had with these characters in these books.
Yeah, well, I told you, I pick them up for kids in my family, or friends' kids. I buy them all the time. I've been getting a lot of stuff on eBay, like cheaper, so I can give them like, little graphic novels, and of like my favorite. I got, for $5, Joe, with like $3 shipping, I got one of these kids a Green Lantern Rebirth trade.
Cool.
And it's in really good shape. Like they say good. And there's like a couple like bends, but nothing bad at all, honestly. So I love, or with the dollar bins recently for a kid's birthday to get like some cool issues. Just because you want to kind of, I know how much love we've gotten out of comics. I want to kind of pass that on, and you can tell when some kids got it in them. That look. They love it. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing better that excitement of tracking down issues, that excitement of learning about characters. Just like, looking into the history of a character, and it's just it's your own world. I think one of the things, especially when you and I were younger, because now there's like streaming services and these kids have everything at their disposal. But when we were younger, man, it felt like a private little club too,
Mm-hmm.
And it was exciting when you met people that were into it, but it was just kind of cool that it was yours,
Yes, exactly. That's the way I felt when we went to these conventions, my friends and I, back in the early 70s. We discovered people like us. We didn't know there was anybody else out there like us. You like Superman too? You like Batman? Oh, yeah. Do you think this artist should be doing this book? No, they should put somebody else on the book. Things like that. But it just went on, and it was great. It was great. I was at the 73 convention when DC made a double announcement that they had gotten the rights to the Shadow, and that they had bought the quality characters, and they were going to start publishing Shazam, Captain Marvel. And that was the 1973 Comic-Con, the Phil Seulink's Comic-Con. We were blown away, my friends and I. Holy crap, we can't wait.
I got a funny thing to tell you too. I'll make it brief. It's kind of a side story, but anyone who I'm sure if someone listened to our first episode, they'll know how Joe and I met. But a little recap: my mother's friend, who was kind of like the friend that's an aunt, married Joe's cousin. Cousin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Frank, and we had met, but when I was a little kid, before Linda actually had seen Frankie again, because they knew each other in high school, and then they met up again when they both gotten divorced. But at one point, Linda had brought over a guy she was dating a little bit, and she brought him over to my parents' house, and I must have been like 10 years old in '86. And my family still tells the story a lot. I dragged him into my room to show him my comic book collection. And I remember I had all my Crisis issues lined up. Actually, it might have been '87 because I had a couple of the new Flashes, my old Flashes, and I made him look at all my comics.
That's
Funny
so
memory.
cool. That is
But
great.
yeah, no. So this issue, a lot happens. Not only does Barry start taking down more in Keystone Central and causing destruction. You have Jay,
Hmm.
Max, and Johnny coming at him in that beautiful splash page that Joe mentioned. Meanwhile, Wally's sitting at home watching all this on the news and just kind of beating himself up a little bit and saying, what can I do against someone who's so much faster than me? Because one thing to note for anyone who wasn't reading the book at this time, if we didn't mention it, after the Crisis and when Wally took over for Barry, Wally took over to honor Barry's memory, as I said in the beginning, and he
Hmm.
took his costume and wore the same costume because he wanted people to remember that version of the Flash. While he also took off his mask because, by saying that I mean reveal his identity to the public because he wanted people to know that it was Barry he was honoring. This is a different
Hmm.
person. But Wally immediately after the Crisis had lost a lot of his speed. He was he could run like I think the max at that point was like 700 miles an hour. And when Barry was alive, Barry and Wally could run at the speed of light, and they were crossing
Yeah,
dimensions and all
multiple
that.
times speed of light. Yeah.
So in this book, Wally is he's gotten faster since when he first took over being the Flash, but he still wasn't anywhere near Barry or Jay or Max or Johnny in speed. He was pretty much the slowest character at this point in this story. So while he's at home,
Mm.
he's like, first of all, he's beating himself up, and he's upset because his mentor and best friend, had tried to kill him and was destroying his hometown and his own legacy. So that's where everyone is at that point. Wally's home and Jay and the guys are trying to take down on Barry Allen, and it's getting really serious, getting dangerous. People are getting hurt. It's
Mm.
a fantastic issue, though, and Joe mentioned it gives both it gives Jay, Max, and Johnny some really cool moments too through the story, which is
Hmm.
another thing that you don't see as much these days in the newer stuff. They tend to make the older guys seem like they're incompetent, which it always annoys me. In this story, Jay and them are giving it as good to Barry as they get. Trouble is, Barry Allen's still the fastest Flash. Um,
Yeah. Is it this story where they mentioned that Jay may be faster, but he doesn't have the endurance because Barry is younger,
exactly. Right,
right?
but they're pretty close. You know what I mean? So at that point,
They're very
yeah,
close.
it
Yeah.
really it makes
Yeah.
a difference. But while this is happening, while this is all going on, with everyone's fighting, and
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, you know, Jay and them are getting their butts kicked at this point. Um, at the same time, they're flashing back. Wally is just kind of walking aimlessly through town, and he finds himself.
Looking like Don
Oh my
Johnson,
god,
by the
totally!
way, from Miami
He's got
Vice.
he's got the stubble. He's got a white suit and a black tank top. Like it's
Yeah.
hilarious. It really,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is pretty funny. But he's walking around aimlessly, but not so aimlessly because he finds himself in the same alleyway where Barry Allen said he
Mhm.
materialized in the beginning of the story. And he's just walking around looking, thinking he might find answers, really probably more of a Hail Mary kind of way, but also just kind of walking around trying to find answers even to anything in life that's going on with the situation, not necessarily specific. At the same time, they keep flashing back and forth, and um, Jay and them are getting, their butts handed to him even more. And then Wally hears a bum in the alley say one word that really pulls things around. He hears the word Iris, which is
Mhm.
Barry's late wife, who was killed by the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom, who was Barry's number one enemy throughout his run. Uh, Wreaked havoc on his life for so long. So Barry, runs to the homeless guy. I shouldn't say homeless guy, and uh, and bribes him, gives him money for the book. because he's reading a book with the word iris, and Wally feels that that's probably not a coincidence. And he starts reading the book, and he's blown away. He's just kind of head buried in it. At the same time, they're showing flashbacks. I mean, they're showing what's going on with Jay and them, and there's this big explosion, and it looks like at least that Barry killed or really hurt Jay. And while he's reading the book, and he says that he goes to the front cover, and he sees two words that turn his whole world around. You don't know what they are.
No, it's very clever.
Very clever. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, especially as a kid who had all these years invested in the Flash, I'm like, say it. And I got to wait a month. Are you kidding me? More than that, really, like a month. Anyway, then Wally immediately looks at you, the camera, and there's lightning is runs to go help Jay and Johnny and them, because whatever his realization is, it made him realize he had to step up. He couldn't sit, he couldn't sit and mope anymore. And you go right to the explosion where it seems like Jay may have died or been hurt, and that this is, like I said, there'd be two quotes from me for this issue, one in the beginning and one in the end. Okay. Literally the first page and the last page of the issue. This is Wally makes it to the scene. He finds Jay's helmet there. He's holding it in his hand, looking at it with this, look on his face, and he says, "Too late. I wasn't fast enough, but those days are over. My name is Wally West. I'm the Flash. And now that I know the secret of Barry Allen, I'm going to bring him down or die trying." I literally must have screamed when I read that. That was like my Captain America in Endgame, Avengers Assemble. That was my moment. Or when he gets the Thor's hammer. For me, that was it. I'm like, oh, it's on. Like whatever he found out, he's back. And that page alone, this psychs me up so much. When I was a kid, I actually made because I made a copy of it, and I hung it up in my room. I had right, and now it's easy to do that. Back then, I had to bring it to school. It was a whole thing. It was black and white then because but such a great moment, and also beautiful art.
Oh, it's gorgeous. That page, that last page is a full page.
Oh,
right?
My God.
Look at it right now.
I'm pretty sure I posted that.
The inking of the
what was that?
You did.
I did, right? Yeah. I love that moment. And I love that version of Wally's costume. I think I actually got the exclusive new Target Funko Pop of this Wally Flash costume. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Anyway, so now it's on.
Yes.
That wraps up that issue, and the next issue is the penultimate issue, and it's a great one. It basically, this issue is you find out very quickly that Jay's actually alive. He's okay, and it begins with Jay, Wally, Max, and Johnny kind of hiding out somewhere and they're all trying to give Wally advice on what to do, on how to, defeat whoever this bad Barry Allen is, or what's going on with him. And Johnny first starts by trying to teach him his speed formula that he that he used, and later that's something else that pops up in Wade's run that's huge when Wally actually does use that. But in this story, Wally can't see it, so to speak. He can't visualize it, so he doesn't do it. Plus, Max is kind of mocking the concept. But but later is for issue 92 of the series, it's actually that becomes a big moment for Wally. Anyway, so my first before we get into the heat of it here, my first my quote for this issue is this: Wally basically arguing with Max Mercury. Max tells Wally for the first time, this hankers back to what Joe was saying before about Wally having to overcome something. And what he has to overcome to defeat Barry Allen is fear. And basically, Max tells him that, and this is the conversation. So there's a couple quotes. All right, this is Wally. All right, that's it. This little college of velocity knowledge is over with. No one can tell me I'm afraid of speed. I love what I can do. And Max says, but you love your Uncle Barry even more. That's why you took his name and costume, isn't it? In a sense, you did it so the world wouldn't forget him or his heroism. You keep saying you don't want to replace Barry, but the moment you become as fast as him, that's exactly what you'll have done. And they give each other that look. And that harkens back to what we were saying before about how Wally was slow after the crisis. And throughout the run, before this story, 70-something issues before, Wally was always slower, losing his speed, almost messing up on purpose often, almost being a jerk on purpose often, because deep down, his biggest fear is to surpass Barry Allen. And he's going to have to overcome that fear in order to defeat this villain and to basically become the man he's meant to be.
Now, you think that when the book started, Volume 1 Flash, Volume 2, number 1, after the crisis, do you think that the original writers, Mike Baron and William Messer-Loebs, had that in mind? Or do you think this is the genius of Mark Waid pulling it all together?
I don't think that Baron did. I do think that I definitely think that that Messer-Loebs did. I think there was even hints here and there in like one of the annuals. Right, yeah. Also, later on, Waid was like one of the editors on the book with Messer-Loebs. I think it was there.
I forgot that.
There's like one annual where it comes up. There's Tina McGee mentions it. Wally's therapist mentions it. Wally was in therapy because, of course, it was the 80s. They allude to it a lot. They also allude to Barry being dead and choosing Wally, like when he became one with there wasn't a Speed Force yet that was created. That was more approaching issue 100. But they alluded to in death, Barry chose Wally. There are a lot of things kind of planted there. I think Messer-Loebs did, yes. I don't think Baron did. I think Baron was just going for like an edgier Wally and a more realistic and power scope Wally.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's definitely what was going on there. I'm just looking through the issue right now. The fight scenes are great.
So great. Even Wally's like, this is how he talks to people. It's so unique to him than other characters. Even when Max makes a comment, when Max is like, trying to teach him the speed formula, Max says something to him like, you look skeptical. You wonder, what could you learn from this old man? And Wally says, I'm trying to be polite. That's Wally. And that's also Waid, because that's, Waid says he basically pretty much gave Wally his personality.
Well, there you go. It comes through on the page, definitely. And I just turned to the final page of the issue. So our listeners, if they don't know, they're going to find out who this Barry Allen is at the end of issue 78. And it's like, it was a holy shit moment for me. I at this point, I knew it wasn't Barry, but I didn't think it was this guy because he was supposed to be dead too.
Well, yeah. So basically after the guys try to give Wally advice, and Max's advice being more, the most important, Wally tells them who it is, but we don't find out yet. Wally just tells them,
right.
And they're all shocked. And he's like, I have a plan. He's like, I need you to do this and that and get Barry to the Flash Museum. I'll be there. And when they're there, Barry's a little beat up because Jay gave him a good beating and his costume's all messed up. So Wally throws him one of the classic Flash rings and tells him to suit up. So Joe, tell us who is Barry Allen in this story?
Barry Allen is Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash. Holy crap!
Holy crap is right.
Oh wow! One of the better jaw-dropping moments in my comic book reading history. This is right up there with, I believe it's the one issue special, the Sinestro Cold War at the end, where it's the Anti-Monitor and who else was it? Superboy Prime. It's like, how they get? Oh my God, they're in deep shit.
And the Cyborg Superman.
And the Cyborg Superman, but this predates that, and this is to this point. I know Superman's already. While this is going on, they're doing a funeral for a friend, if I'm not mistaken. So Superman had died, a year earlier, but we knew that was last. But this is just so big. Holy crap! I sound like Frank Barone from Raymond. I've been watching too much of that lately, but it's a great comic book moment. It's everything you want in a comic book. It's 5 issues in. He's built his way to this It's a great payoff. This is how you write a comic book. I hope our listeners, if they haven't read it, will go back and read it. And if there's anybody who's in the industry right now listening, yeah, you should read it too. this is how
And
it's
like you
done.
said, when you said about Barry coming back, it was also more of a punch because again, back then characters didn't come back from the dead. At least not
Right.
like this. This was a big death. Like Barry, he was not only, it wasn't like he disappeared. Barry killed him. Barry had to break his neck to save
Yeah.
his future wife Fiona's life. And there was a body. It wasn't, back now they can literally have a body and they'll bring him back a minute later. They don't even
Oh
care.
yeah.
There's no punch or impact with death, which is why I wonder why they even bother doing it. But like this was like, he's dead. Like it actually, when you said, they can't be him. He's dead. People actually were like, yeah, you're right. Now it's a joke. But it's like whatever. Like Joe said before, Wonder Woman died and came back twice last year.
Yeah.
But so but cleverly, which is great in both respects with Barry and Thawne, he didn't bring either one of them back from the dead. You find out that basically this is a Thawne from before he met Barry Allen.
Right.
Yeah,
it's kind of a convoluted way of telling, but it all fits
they
together.
don't go too forward. It's not like the Flash TV show where it's like what is going on.
Oh my God, no!
This really this is easy to understand. I think for most people.
Oh yeah, it's very linear. Very linear.
The Flash show is like 45 Thawnes. He's been dead. He's the Thawne with the other face. This one is ridiculous.
No, they just throw stuff in after each commercial to let's be clever, and it's not.
They also use him too much. They use him too much in that Williamson run too with Flash. Like Jeff Johns said something years ago, which is ironic because he's the one that started using him more later. He said that Zoom, whether it's Hunter or Thawne, like it should be a big deal when he comes out. It should be once in a while and a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Which is this was crazy. And honestly. Thawne wasn't used in a meaningful way. Zoom wasn't used again for a meaningful way until 197. You know what I mean? Like he might have popped up in a background or like, a time travel story quick. He was there. He wasn't the villain of a story, But yeah, so you find out it's Thawne and it's even though it's Thawne and not Barry, Thawne was still as fast as Barry Allen. So Wally is still a disadvantage. Wally still has to overcome his fear if he has any hope of defeating Professor Zoom.
Exactly. And then we get this beautiful. Well, I don't want to jump the gun. I'm looking at issue 79. I love the square.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's heavy in the hand. It's a great. What a
triple-sized issue, right?
Yeah. And the cover looks like a panel from the as you would see in the comic book.
The artist on that was different. Who was that artist on the cover?
Oh wow! Did they list the cover artist?
It wasn't Greg LaRoe. He did the rest.
No, you know what? While you're, I guess, do you want to move on to this now?
Yeah, well, actually, honestly, otherwise we kind of went over basically what happened. Yeah, so we can go to issue 79.
I'll look up meantime.
Absolutely.
See if I can find the cover.
The title of the story of 79 is called The Once and Future Flash.
I love that title.
Me too. And we're going to get into the whole, the story and the revelations and all that. But I'll start again with my quote of the issue, which kind of answers the question of the whole how Wally overcomes his fear. The quote or quotes of this issue takes place while Wally is fighting Thawne, and Thawne is still kicking the crap out of Wally. He's got no chance. He's done. He's really he's going to die if he can't overcome his fear and just kind of step into the role he needs to. And what kind of shakes him out of it is Thawne makes a comment about how he'll be the one that replaces Barry Allen, and he'll be the one that Central City will remember instead of Barry Allen. And so this is Wally's quote. This quote is one of my favorites too. I love this. I love this whole series so much. But Wally's chasing after Thawne, who again up to this point was smacking Wally around. Wally couldn't touch him. So this is Wally's quote. Max was right. He was right all along. I am afraid. I'm afraid of replacing Barry, but I'm more afraid of letting this bastard do it. And he is
Yeah,
punches Thor in the back of the head, and
right in the back of
and
the
that's
head. Yep.
it. He just basically takes over and is beating the crap out of him. But we can get back to that. But so yeah, the issue. Who did the cover art show? Do you know? Oh
Ty
my God!
Templeton.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I found it on Mike's Amazing World, which is
What
a
else
great
has he done?
website
I
for.
feel like I know his work.
I believe Templeton. I could be wrong about this, but I believe he worked on some of the Batman animated comic books back
Yes.
in the '90s.
Yes.
Along with Rich Burkett.
Yeah,
Richard.
I have a distinct image
How
of
you pronounce his name?
like animated
Yeah.
Nightwing or something. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, and he's a great artist. He has a almost a cartoony style, but it works. It really does work. Very clean, and it's just a beautiful line work. You're right. It was definitely not Greg LaRocque, but until I looked it up, I didn't realize it was him.
So anyway, yeah. So basically, Wally has revealed him as Thawne. And again, we'll get back to the fight later, but Wally still needs to know, like, what happened. How did you do this? How did you pull off your own resurrection? And Thawne explains not only what he did, but also for new readers, kind of gives a little origin of who he is. How comes from the 25th century. He was Barry Allen's biggest fan. He adored
The
him.
biggest fan.
He wanted to be him. And this comes right out of his origin in Flash 139. He found a time capsule with Barry Allen's suit in it. He's able to, science lingo, take some of the energy and give himself super speed. He also, because he wants to be him, has a 25th century science. He gives himself Barry Allen's face. His goal is to go. He buys the cosmic treadmill out of an antique shop and wants to go back in time and meet his mentor. He wants to meet Barry Allen. So he has the speed, he has the face, he has the treadmill. He runs back on the treadmill, but he's never used that before. It gets messed up. It kind of explodes and it shoots him into the wrong time. It shoots him a few years after Barry Allen's already been dead. And in that story, he goes to the Flash Museum, and again, in the 25th century, no one knows the true identity of the Reverse Flash, and he finds out who it is when he goes to the Flash Museum. He finds out that he is destined to become the first Flash and die at the hands of Barry Allen.
Barry Allen.
That's a pretty crazy, an interesting reveal, right, Joe?
Very much so. I mean, it's like okay, now we know why this guy's a psychotic, but he becomes even more psychotic, and it's just like, holy crap! Here we go again with the holy craps, but can't help it. But it's just an amazing, villain origin background, and I'm looking at it right now as we're talking, and it's just there's this page 32 where he's really beating the living daylights out of poor Wally, and then that page you mentioned. Where Wally, finally conquers his inner demon, and I'm not going to let this bastard make the world think that he's Barry Allen. So it's just
I love it.
it's an amazing.
I love it. And there's so many great quotable Wally moments. So there's that one page that it's not a splash page, but it's most of a page where, like you just said, where Wally's getting his ass kicked by Thawne. Which all leads to the quote I mentioned in the beginning. But another quote I love is when like Linda is like, Thawne runs away and leaves. He's like, if you're still up for a fight, Wally, come, chase after me. And Linda's like, don't get up, like stay down. You can't beat him. Like you please stay down, Wally. You're a mess. And Wally's, and again, this is right after Thawne made that comment about replacing Barry, which was the catalyst of getting Wally to step up and overcome his fear. But before that scene, I love Wally says to Linda, that thought you said you had that I might not be able to take him down on my own. He gives her this like long dramatic kiss. He's like, put it out of your head. And he gives this look like it's a badass look. And that's when he goes and he pops Thawne and starts, like beating him down and just really being like the Wally West that we know and love. And speaking of splash pages, though, that next one, I think I mean, how great is that?
You mean when Molly clocks
When
him?
he backhands him and says something,
Yeah, yeah.
he's
Uh,
like,
like this.
he's like, he's talking to Thawne. He's like, Mister, I knew Barry Allen. Believe me, you're no Barry Allen. He is
You know Barry
backhands
Allen,
him,
yeah.
and at that point, Thawne's like a whimpering like fool. At this point,
Yeah, he
he's a
is.
defeated
Yes.
man. Um, and Wally tricks him into getting on the cosmic treadmill and running his way home. Wally jumps on the treadmill and acts like he's going to go back in time and kill Thawne in his crib, and but he just runs on it really fast and runs away so fast that Thawne can't see him. And
Mm,
Thawne, addled from just getting his ass beat and all that, runs himself back to the 25th century and
that's right.
basically is a clean kind of a loop because of just like he had memory issues when he came back. You assume he goes back and he still doesn't ever remember fighting Wally West
Exactly.
ever. As far as he's concerned, that never happened, and he'll go on to fight Barry Allen, live that life, and die at his hands.
Yeah, I like there's that scene now when he disappears on the treadmill and Hal Jordan goes, "Nicely done. You didn't actually time travel, I take it." I love that. It's like Hal knows what's going on
Totally.
too.
Oh,
He's the seasoned space
he
cop. So
Barry was his best friend. Wally grew up with
yep,
both of them. They're he's Uncle Hal to
yeah, he's Uncle Al,
I mean,
exactly. So
I love those two together.
they're
they're
great.
great. We had such a great ending. It was Wally, coming into his own. He finally, came out of his uncle's shadow. And even Hal says
Mhm.
to him, he's like, I used to think that that Barry was the greatest hero I ever met, and until I saw someone who sacrificed his life just for his memory. And this is where Wally got a lot of respect, for a lot, not just characters in the book, but for readers who before that might have, I loved the book before this, but some people were maybe a little hesitant that they still wanted the Barry to come back. But this solidifies Wally West as the Flash.
And that compliment that Hal paid Wally it didn't happen in one issue, it didn't happen in one panel, it didn't happen in the character's first appearance like they do today, where the John Kent is better than his father because he's John Kent. No, he's not. He's got to
And
work
he should
for it.
lead the Justice
And
League
Wally,
after being like
yeah,
silly.
yeah, you're oh son, you're so much better than I am. I'll get the hell out of
Exactly.
here. You know, you, Wally had to earn
Oh,
this. He had to earn this in the most visceral way. The things he had to give up to earn this, and the things that he had, that he had to attain at the same time. It's a hero's journey, outwardly and inwardly. It's a classic hero's journey, and this is what makes it such a great seminal story, not only for the Flash, but comic books in general.
you're
Yeah,
right. Wally Beyond earned it. He was kind of even in the Justice League books. Prior to this, later when he was in Morrison jail and on, he was already at this level, so it was different. But people were always kind of, the elongated man would make comments like, refer to
yeah.
Barry as the real Flash, and Wally, people didn't give him an easy time. Yeah, and some of that was deserved because Wally was being a jerk back then. But he definitely, you're right, he earned it.
He earned it. I'm sure. Can't think of any specific issues, but I'm sure that the Batman gave him trouble before before
Yeah,
this
Batman
story
did. Batman
happened.
was a little easier, believe it or not, than some people. I think Bruce
Yeah.
saw something in Wally always uh, a little different, but a lot like Power Girl, Elongated Man, even Hal.
Oh, Power Girl, you're right. Yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Power Girl
Yeah.
especially. Even Hal at some points, was a kind of grow up
Yeah.
kid, Um, but yeah, it was really he really earned it. It was such a great story, and God, get chills so many times reading it. It was such a great book, great art. I feel like this is one of those things. I always say Wally to me is the most developed and fleshed out character in comics, at least for DC. And it really everything kind of came together here. This is where he became the man that he would become. He's a great hero here. He becomes a good boyfriend, husband later, then probably the best
Mm-hmm.
father in comics after this. Um,
Hell of a lot better than Clark Kent.
exactly. Better than anyone, but yeah, better than Clark Kent. Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Or Reed
he puts
Richards.
his family first. A lot of characters say that, but his wife and kids are everything to him, and the extended family, Jay, Barry, everyone.
Yeah.
Such a good book, and then again, plants more seeds, like we talked about. There's not only we have Max Mercury in here, but you find out later that the book that the homeless guy was reading in the alley, that book was actually it was a property of Ebor Thawne. But when you look at the title credit of the author of the book, it was Iris Allen, who had supposedly died before Barry did. But this book that they found in the alley was published 2 or 3 years later.
Right, 1997.
96, 97. And right there, Wally knows that his aunt is out there somewhere alive. And I guess he says at the end of the issue, and she'll be returning soon because she has a book to write.
Right, and Aunt Iris is Wally loves Aunt Iris. There's no way to measure how much Wally loves his aunt. It's just that's one of the best relationships in comic books. And I'm going to wax poetic here. And I've said this before. I probably on the podcast, but I've said it to you many times. And this, you know what? Having read this story now, this cements it in my mind. Wally is definitely the greatest hero in the DC universe. And yes, I'm the biggest Superman fan, but Wally is the heart and soul of the freaking DC universe. And this story proves it. And this story, the Return of Barry Allen, is right up there now with Daredevil Born Again, Batman Year One, and The Return of Barry Allen. Those are my three favorites.
It's amazing, and he is the heart. He's great, and I just I've reread this so many times. But you're right about him and Iris. There are moments where sometimes it depends on what, I guess, the flavor of the story, what they're trying to say. But there are times where Wally says that Iris is his hero, and that he was excited to go live with her for the summer, not even as much hang out with Barry, with the Flash, but there was both. It's so funny to hear myself say this because I do love Iris West, but man, I can't stand her in the show.
Oh my God.
I feel like it's weird saying this. If someone...
No, she's annoying as all hell in the TV show. It's just like, come on, you're not a superhero.
You're not. And in some ways, it's a weird thing. I don't even really like Iris in the comics when she's young with Barry. I like her when she's Aunt Iris. She's not the comic too is like a cliche. They make her nitpick on Barry all the time, or she was always kind of mean to him,
She was kind of like a meaner version of June Cleaver back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, when she was married to Barry. Yeah, didn't it wasn't a good.
And the show is just she's awful.
Oh, the show was awful. But she might be the worst thing about the show.
So I'll just I know we'll discuss a couple more things before we sign off, but I would like to say the last quote that I love out of the book before we. I feel like I'm reading the whole issue to everyone, but so they have a copy. Linda and Wally are standing by the pier, holding the book that Iris is destined to write, and he says that Max had read it and told him that there are things about Wally West and his future that he could read if he wanted to. And Wally looks and he throws the water into the river and says, "Forget it. If there's an end to my story, I don't want to know it. History is something captured and owned by the pages of a book. But the future belongs to me. My name is Wally West. I'm the Flash."
There you go.
And by the way, a little fun fact for the fans of the show: the whole saying who I am, I'm Wally West, I'm Barry Allen, I'm the fastest man alive. That was a Wally thing that really Wade cemented.
Yes, and it was the first couple of seasons of the TV show, right?
It's a great opening, but it was definitely a Wally thing, and Wade would make it funny sometimes. Like he would kind of mix it up. It was he was really good at like those intros.
Yeah, I have a couple more flashbacks.
I'd love to. Yes.
Okay, so Barry. So we're talking about Barry. Barry Allen's first appearance, showcase number 4. I think most people know that. Cover date September, October 1956.
Who wrote that again?
So that means you probably.
Who was that? Who wrote it?
Oh, that's Bob Kenninger. Bob Kenninger, Carmen Infantino, inked by Joe Kubert,
My God.
incredible,
Amazing. Yeah.
right? Absolutely cool. And then, of course, Wally, and I said this in the past, it bears repeating. Wally's first appearance, Flash, Volume 1, number 110, cover date January 1959. Wally predates the entire Marvel universe. Case closed. That's all I got to say. I mean, I'm not putting down, how much I
Oh,
love
yeah.
the Marvel universe and what Stan and Jack and Steve and Don Heck and Roy Thomas did, but before Fantastic Four appears on the stands in '61, Wally's already made his appearance. So, Wally, if this story does not give him the respect that he so rightfully deserves, then I don't know what would. But please, folks, if you go out and buy this story, you can buy the back issues. They're probably not that
Not terrible. If you go to a con, you
terrible.
could, you go to a con,
Yeah.
you can probably find them in $1 or $2 bins.
Sure. And also, if you can get Green Lantern Volume 2, number 40, and read that before issue 77, it'll help even add a little
Yeah,
more
I forgot
dimension
about
to the
that.
story. Yeah. There's even a Dark Star in that story. I'm looking at the cover right now. It's Hal, Wally, and Barry, Barry, of course, and a Dark Star. Yeah. So, but where else can you find this, Keith?
Yeah, well,
It's been collected,
in,
right?
in new collections that are like currently being published, you can they have the Flash by Mark Waid. I believe it's 8
Okay.
omnibus like trade paperbacks.
Wow.
They're like $25 a pop, I think. But they're worth it. There's a lot of bang for your buck in there, and they are beautiful additions. I believe they're on the Hoopla app. I think James and I discussed it recently.
Oh, good.
If you want that, I will say, because again, I'm like a drug dealer with this story and so many other comics. I bought recently 2 copies of the Return of Barry Allen trade paperback on eBay. With shipping total, I got them for like $10 to $12 each. If you give them to like people I know, but it's a great deal. I mean, that's basically what the cover price was for it. In pretty good shape. This trade paperback doesn't have to be perfect, but those are where they're collected. If you have DC Universe Infinite, not only is that on there, but Mark Waid's entire runs on there. I recommend starting with that, because if you read Born to Run, especially, it adds so much to it.
That's where he starts his run.
Yeah,
right?
It's Wally's origin, and it's very much about Barry and Iris and him. It's a great companion book to this. But it's on DC Universe app. I think that's pretty much it where it's collected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm probably gonna go out and get a copy myself. I've got the originals.
You don't have one?
Leave them in the box and read that. No, I got the originals.
Okay.
I to pull out the 7 issues to read this with the Green Lantern, to read this story. I don't have one. I've got I've got a Daredevil Born Again. I think I have multiple copies of Batman Year One. No, that's the Dark Knight Returns. I have multiple copies of it in trade, but yeah, this is. I've never given this story to any. I've given people I know Daredevil Born Again and Batman Year One.
It's a great gift. Gift.
Yeah, this is. I'm going to find somebody to give this to. Find somebody in the family.
Great gift. It's a great story. It holds up. It really does. I mean,
without a doubt, it's a classic superhero story. It's got everything you want in a superhero story. It's got action, adventure, mystery, intrigue. It's got soul searching. It's as I said before, it's a journey outwardly, but more importantly, it's a journey inward. Just as important, and that's what you get to see the soul of this character. And that's why we love him so much.
Yeah, no, he's this guy, Wally West, has been my favorite character since I was 10 years old.
Well, as I said, I'm pretty sure he's my favorite now too. I haven't been too happy with what they've been doing with Superman the last 10 years or so. And yes, there's that story that happened with Wally. We won't mention it. We won't say that. Like he who should not be named in the exactly. Movies. But for the most part, I think Wally is probably the best written DC character over the last. Well, how many? Well, since he's been around since 1959. So what is that? 64 years.
Yeah, I equate him and Matt Murdock, again, not just because they're redheads, but because I think they both are each company's most consistently well-written characters.
Completely agree. Matt Murdock is is the best Batman
Right,
comic
right.
in the last
Right.
60 years. And Batman's had some pretty good
Absolutely.
comics, but he's also had some he's also had some down
And
periods
also, there's
too.
a unique character, Matt, compared to other superheroes.
Yeah, you know what? When you talk about that, Matt Murdock, Daredevil was the last mainstream superhero that I glommed onto, and that was in. I only picked up his first issue, which was 158, when I heard about the Miller, what Frank Miller was doing with Daredevil, and so that was 1979. I'd been reading comics at that point for 13, 14 years, and Daredevil was the last mainstream character that I started reading regularly. I don't know why,
Hmm.
but I'm sure glad I
Oh,
picked it up.
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, you're right. That's interesting parallels and dichotomies between Matt Murdock
Oh,
and
definitely.
Wally
Yeah, you're
West.
right.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Do you have any recommendations, Joe? For anything new or?
Well, obviously the recommendation is to pick this story up. Okay, yeah. I also have. Oh, I got something else here. Right, I do have something. I got this. Well, a couple of years ago, but I don't think I've ever mentioned it. I have the. It's an omnibus, kind of a small one because it's volume one. It's a Silver Age Sewer Squad omnibus, volume
Really?
one. And why I picked this up is because when I spoke before about Flash Volume 1, 184, the cover was by Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito. And this entire book complete has all 6 issues of the A Brave and the Bold Suicide Squad, all penciled and inked by Andrew and Esposito. And then the second half of the book is the Star Spangled War Stories, the war that time forgot. Again, all penciled and inked by Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito. And most of the stories in this book are written by the late, great Bob Kenninger, who was, responsible for recreating The
Yeah,
Flash with
yeah,
Barry
yeah,
Allen,
yeah,
which led to Wally West.
yeah.
So there you go. Yeah.
The
So
Renaissance of comics. Yeah, I mean.
yeah. What do you
Oh
got?
well, I'm actually gonna. Well, I'm gonna recommend. Like I kind of always do, push the. There's 2 things. Of course, read the new Flash comic starring Wally and family. Right now, they're in the middle of the 1 Minute War at DC. Is coming out twice a month. Great book. I
Oh,
always
yes.
push that, but I would pick something not new, something I recently reread that I just think I forgot how awesome it was. I kind of wanted to put it out there to everyone. Superman's Secret Origin by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. It's just a beautiful,
Ooh.
beautiful book, and like we said with this, it is a great gift for someone too. I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
the best Superman origins, up there with Man of Steel. It's just a great story. I expect nothing less, pretty much, from Johns and Gary Frank together.
Gary Frank,
I
yeah.
really, I really can't recommend it enough. It's a gorgeous book. Um, uh,
Make a great animated movie.
they made a movie out of that.
Make a great live action movie.
Oh,
No,
it
they haven't
would.
done
Oh
it
my
yet, but I'm
god,
saying,
yeah, it's
yeah,
perfect. He literally, James Gunn should just take that graphic novel and do that.
and do that
It's
as
so
Superman
good.
Legacy,
Just
definitely.
like it's just a really, really great book. It got heart. It got humor. It feels like it just feels like something you always knew. It's got like the Smallville show feel to it a little bit. The Donner movies, the classic comics, the Byrne stuff, the Kurt Swan stuff. It's it's fantastic. I recently reread it, and I kind of wanted to put that back out there to people, because sometimes either if you have read it, you might want to reread it, or if you haven't read it and you like Superman at all, you should pick it up.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Beautiful, beautiful comic book. Beautiful story. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Gary Frank's artwork is just amazing.
Yeah,
It's,
amazing, amazing. So yeah, I guess that'll wrap up our episode. I just wanted to remind everyone to if you enjoy the show, please like our Facebook page or our Instagram, as well as subscribe. We really appreciate it, and thank you for sitting through Joe and I's love fest for the for Wally West. I
for
mean,
Wally,
basically, we're just talking about him like he's a real guy. Um,
it's a bromance with Wally
Yep,
West.
exactly. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. And if you'd like to reach out and contact us, please do so also on the Facebook or Instagram page. Thanks, Joe. Thank you for allowing me to host and to.
Oh, you're quite
And
welcome.
it was a blast. I loved it.
Oh, big blast. Yeah.
Take care, everyone.